Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. I hope you're very well. It's the start of a new week and it's another story. And this one is actually following on from our story on this particular topic last week, showing the job listing that gave away that class markings for the UK, for UK drones were on the way. And the announcement then made to regulators by the Chancellor, as per all of that, today a new CAA announcement confirms that class markings, aka C labels, are coming to the UK from January 1st, 2026. Insert applause. It's obviously some news which all of us who fly drones in the open category have been waiting for, frankly. This is also confirmed to be the system based on retained EU law, so that tells us an awful lot as well. There will no doubt be some subtle changes and tweaks, but overall, the system will be the same one as was originally intended for use in the UK from 2023. It feels like such a long time ago now. This is a low cost and simple way to allow a wider use of drones in the UK, which presents a low risk. Overall, it is constructive news, I think. The long transitional period that we have been in certainly proves that drone use in the UK is overall safe in terms of aspects such as injury, etc. And this seems like a natural step to me. Tonight, I don't want this video to become bogged down in the whys and why ifs and what ifs, etc. We can save that for a deep dive another time. Instead, coming up, we'll break down this announcement in terms of what it actually means for your drones and explain a bit more about the C label system, the class marking system. First up, the first thing to discuss is what about a transitional period? Although it doesn't feel like it, we've technically been in a transitional period for, at the time these class markings come in, 4 years. That was supposed to be a period where legacy drones can still be used in the airspace under the transitional rules, allowing time to adopt the new drones for drones to come out, etc. But obviously, all of that has happened whilst we've been within this extended period, and then, of course, get the benefits of actually using those drones. With the date confirmed as January 1st, 2026, will this mean essentially that there will be no period of adjustment beyond this, or are we going to get something else? Lots of drones are class marked now, of course, so that helps, but also a lot of drones are not, and those would technically be relegated to the A3 airspace, so far away from people and away from towns, etc. As of Jan 1st, that is, of course. It will also be very interesting to see how retroactive labelling will be dealt with in the UK and if the same system as the EASA region will be deployed for that as well. I think it's going to be something which is going to be of real interest, because keep in mind, as I said, we've been in this very long transitional period for a while now. Of course, it was extended, but we didn't get the class markings, the C label drones to play within at all in the UK. So although it was transitional, we technically weren't actually heading to anything, were we, for certainly the last couple of years. So will that mean that Jan 1st is going to be a brick wall date for all of the old drones, Mavic 2 Pros, etc., that kind of thing? Or are we going to see an extension maybe for 12 months or something like that to actually have an actual transition period? It's going to be very interesting to see because, of course, as I say, we do now actually have the C-class drones out and about. There's a few actually on the table behind me here, including the Air 3S, etc. A big factor will be the conformity assessment bodies and whether or not we will simply accept those used in the EU EASA region. I don't see why not. Or might we gain our own? Could this mean that we'd end up with different models approved in the UK as to the EU? That's extremely doubtful to me, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on because you just never know what might happen and what might change in a subtle way for the UK. How will this impact your drone? Well, firstly, I want to a quick explanation on what C labels are, or class markings. They are a system of classifications to show that a drone meets certain standards. If it does, then the drone will display a sticker with a C and a number next to it. The lower number, the more you can do with it, especially around people and in towns, etc. The ideal, I would say the magic spot is really going to be around the C1 marking for things like the Air 3S. Sub 250 gram drones, and if the original plan is kept, which we don't see why not at the moment, So I just need to actually hit a button regarding adverts. Let me do that. Everyone watching live would appreciate that. Now, as the CAA mentioned in their announcement that this is actually going to be the plans already retained in law, then we're likely to see an allowance for all sub 250 gram drones, even legacy ones, to enjoy the A1 airspace category without the need for a C label update. These are the types of differentials that was already planned for the UK previously, and we will keep an eye for any announcements to change this. So in terms of sub 250, it could still be a good thing, because actually class markings and C labels coming in wasn't necessarily the best thing for sub 250 legacy drones, but here in the UK, they intended to keep that. So we'll keep a very close eye on that. In terms of the class markings themselves, these would use C0 to C4 labels. Now we have an old version of CAP 2012, which was still the very simple one-page explainer, which showed how they intended to use them in the UK. So I'm going to bring that up now, but do again keep in mind that this is the old version of CAP 2012. So this is how we assume that this will actually, how this will happen. So let's bring this. So A1, flying over uninvolved people, but of course not over crowds. That is something which is always going to be an issue here in the UK. So privately built, less than 250 grams flying weight and under 19 meters a second. Legacy aircraft before, and again, as long as it's sub 250 gram weight. So again, this one here in the middle here, that is in the middle of the A1 here, that is the differential that we had between the UK and EASA markets. And then of course, C0 toys, maximum takeoff mass, and again, 90 meters a second. And yes, that's all that you basically needed to do was read the user manual. So your sub 250 gram drone, your Mavic Minis, etc., whatever they may well be, you won't have to go and get a C label if this is still the system which they intend to keep on using. Let me just bring this up without it blurring the text too much. So, and then no intentional flight over uninvolved persons. So this is the difference in terms of the C1 label. So something like your DJI Air 3S. So it needs to be under 900 grams maximum takeoff mass, or 80 joules in terms of the impact on someone if it hits them. And of course, so we did have the A1 transitional period, which is the sub 500 gram, but that is probably going to go. And all you're going to need to use C1 aircraft is, of course, registering, etc., reading the user manual, and that's basically it. The A2, you're going to be obviously be able to use C2 aircraft up to 4 kilograms. Bear in mind at the moment, we are, of course, stuck in the legacy period, which basically means that we only get to use aircraft up to 2 kilograms with our A2 CFC, and we have to keep a 50-meter horizontal. Well, of course, with the C2, it's going to be up to 4 kilograms, which is pretty crazy, really. And of course, then with the slow mode or low speed mode engaged, you'll be able to go within 5 meters of people using the CAA 1-to-1 rule. So this is pretty dramatic in terms of C1 and C2 in terms of what you're going to be able to do. Of course, because they're higher up there, you're going to be able to use any of those drones in the A3 category as well, which, as it says here, is C3, C4, etc. Now, I do actually have a breakdown in terms of the individual drone classes, and let's have a look at the current guidelines for each class of drone. Now, I know that this one is correct, so this will work, he says, hoping it does. So yeah, C0, so very small unmanned aircraft, including toys, that are less than 250 grams maximum takeoff mass, have a maximum speed of 19 meters a second, so approximately 42.5 miles an hour, are unable to be flown more than 120 meters from the controlling device. Now, if everybody remembers, there was a very large issue when C labels came in across EASA and EU, and in fact the update that impacted the EU EASA drones also impacted UK ones for a very short period of time, where it would actually limit how far away, how high you can fly that drone basically from you. So that obviously came in place very quickly, and it was a bit of an issue. Well, that is something that will come in terms of the newer drones, so the C0 drones. It's unclear in terms of legacy drones, because of course they won't be C0 marked. So that sub 250 gram thing, if we keep it, will mean the existing minis we have now that don't have those labels will be, really highly valuable, frankly, in terms of being able to use them. So C1, they're either less than 900 grams maximum takeoff mass or are made and perform in a way that if they collide with a human head, very specifically, the energy transmitted will be less than 80 joules and have a maximum speed of 90 meters a second, again, 42.5 miles an hour, designed and constructed so as to minimize injury to people. The standard also covers other aspects such as noise limits, height limits, and requirements for remote identification and geo-awareness systems. There will be more to come in terms of remote ID, because that will be rearing its head again later this year in the UK, I believe, anyway. So C2, this is obviously something like your Mavic 3 Pro, so slightly heavier drones, but actually the fact that this will actually allow you to get up to 4 kilograms is pretty incredible, maximum takeoff mass. Designed and constructed so as to minimize injury to people, again, equipped with a low speed mode, which limits the maximum speed to 3 meters a second, so 6.7 miles an hour when selected by a remote pilot. And then when you're in that mode, you'll basically be able to fly the drone, but you'll be able to fly it within 5 meters of uninvolved people, which is relatively exciting, I think. Certainly, if you think about the fact that, you know, something like an Air 3S, you can fly right up to people, zero separation, just no intentional flights over people. Something like the Mavic 3 Pro or a C2 drone, you can get within 5 meters. When you're looking at the moment that we are restricted to 50 meters with an A2 CFC, that's quite incredible, because this, of course, the C1 side of things, so these drones, you won't actually need to have an A2 CFC either. So it should be an interesting one, shouldn't it? And then C3 and C4, as you might expect, basically start to become really more things that are just less than 25 kilograms maximum takeoff mass, which of course is the open category limit, and that they meet certain standards in terms of other bits and pieces on safety. But really, it's the C0, C1 and C2 drones that you'll be most interested in. If you own a current DJI drone, you might like to go and have a look at it in terms of actually taking a look at the bottom of it to see whether or not it already has a class marking. This will obviously help us to use drones like the Air 3S, which is the C label in the A1 airspace, so zero separation, as I was saying, from uninvolved people. And it's to me, it's going to be incredible to get those larger drones up to 4 kilogram, Mavic 3 Pro, etc., within 5 meters. I think it's going to change so many things. So we're going to be able to do much more. The world of the open category drones really does start to open up for the UK. So that's a lot of positives, isn't it? Remember that this is coming for the open category overall. So you will be in a position where flying commercially a C1 labeled Air 3S would actually bring you more freedoms than flying the same drone under an existing category operational authorization under something like the PDRA 01. So that really does mean a low bar of regulation for so many commercial flights too, which I think is actually going to be pretty exciting. Now, the shadow in the background of all of this is, of course, the ongoing CAA review of drones in the UK and how that might impact things in the medium and longer term. If you remember, we spoke about this recently on the channel in terms of the previous public consultation and the fact that that is still moving along. This move by government to allow class markings really feels like a reaction to the clock ticking towards the end of the year. They had to make a decision soon whether it was going to bring in the new regulations, of course, they're not ready for yet, or actually, essentially, what they decided to do is roll out the cheaper option, and the option that actually gives you more use of low-risk drones and accept the class markings. And of course, there is a workload already on the CAA, who are rolling out UK SORA this year, so that's a very, very big project for them. So whether this good news is tainted with issues later in 2026 and beyond will be something that we will, of course, keep a very close eye on. We will keep you, of course, updated on this. So if you are new here, do remember to hit that subscribe button. And all my regulars, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, it does make me smile. And after my technical error earlier of the wrong page loading, I could do with a smile sometimes, couldn't I? Excellent. So there we go. That is what I think is basically really, this is good news overall. This is something we need to keep a close eye on in terms of the subtleties and how this is actually rolled out. We will, of course, keep you across all of that. But the two most important factors of the announcement by the UK CAA today is that, of course, that they are coming in January 1st, and that it is under the current retained EU law. So we pretty much know that this system that I keep flicking across to here is probably going to be a good reflection in terms of what we should expect. But again, whether or not there'll be subtleties, will they allow the legacy sub 250 in? Who knows? Will sub 250 legacies get that update and won't be able to fly very far away from you anyway? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see on all of that. But as ever, we will, of course, keep you fully informed here on Geeksvana.